Yeah, welcome to this particular video, and in this video we'll be attempting to clone the Google sign-in page. So this is your regular Google sign-in page. Each time you want to sign into Google, you're definitely going to see something like this. So this is what we'll be cloning in this particular video. So let's get started. The first thing I did was to create a login folder. I called the name of the folder login, and in the folder login in my system I have another folder called images. So inside of my images folder I have two images here. I have the Google icon and I also have the Google logo. So for you to get this, you can simply just go to Google and search for Google logo, right? So basically just type Google logo. So if you type google logo.png, you should be able to see something like this, right? So click on images and basically just download one. Right, so I downloaded this one, right? Then same thing goes to the icon. To just pick one of the icon, probably this, and also download it too as well. So if you download it, put them inside a folder, and basically one of them is called Google icon and the other one is called Google logo, right? So these two images. So the next thing I did was to open my VS Code and basically just drag and drop the entire login page folder here. So since I have everything here now, so I have my folder here as usual. With my new projects, I can actually start cloning this particular Google homepage. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to create my index.html file, which is going to be my homepage, of course. So I'm going to type index here.html. Now that I have my index.html, just as a shortcut with just exclamation mark and you hit enter, it will give me my basic structure for my HTML. So exclamation mark, I hit enter. This is going to just generate this HTML code for me, which includes the heading tag, the body tag, and the HTML code itself, right? Which is pretty good. So I like this. So I can just go ahead and call this Google, or I think let's call it sign in dash Google accounts. Alright, so the reason why I'm giving it this, I think that's what it is originally. So if you go to the Google homepage that we want to clone and you see somewhere around here, so it's Gmail, so we could actually just type Gmail, anyone. So now that we have it there, the next thing I want to do now is let's start cloning this thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is to basically create my CSS file and link it up. So I'll come over here, I'll create a new file, I'll say style.css. So once I have my style.css here, I know that everything is fine. I can actually just split this into two. Then I'll just do something like this. View, I'll go to editor layout, then I'll go to columns, two columns. Okay, two columns is fine. So it's basically just divide my stuff into two, so I can drag this other one and bring it here. It's open three for me. Let me close this one. So I have my two columns here. Okay, this looks cool. So this simply means that right here I have my CSS and also right here I have my HTML. So I can just do this and type link. So once I do this, this will allow me to link my external CSS. So this is going to be working like as my external CSS, right? So I have link style sheet. So it's a full stop sign and a forward slash. I should be able to select my CSS file. So I've successfully linked this particular CSS file. So I'll be using external style sheet in what I'm doing. So the next thing I actually want to do right now is to go ahead and start building my website. So now the first thing I would love to do is to actually design the section that will enable us for it to be at the middle here, right? So I want something where I can have that will enable me to type something at the middle here. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a div. I could just call it a holder. Let's just call it a holder class. So we have our holder class, and I'll save this here, and I'll come over here. So instead of us swiping back and swiping forward to again, another thing we could simply do is minimize this. I'm just looking for a better way so that we'll not be swiping back and forward, right? Let's minimize this a bit. So let me just go back to view, editor appearance, single. Alright, so let's go back to single so that our design here, we could also minimize this too as well and have it here. Alright, cool. So you could see what we have now. We could have both our code base and our stuff on the same page, so I will not be going back and forth. I think that is great actually. So let me close this place. All right. So now that I have it like this, even before I start designing and writing CSS, let me just run my design. So I have the live code installed. So I'll right click, I'll say open with live server. So I have this thing installed, so I'll just open with live server. So once I do this, so it will attempt to open it with live server for me. So this is it. So I have my stuff here and everything is here too as well. Now let's start the actual work. So I've linked my CSS. So let's create this holder class. So I will come over here, I will do this and I'll say holder. So the first thing I want to give the holder class, I want to give it a width of 100%. So it's going to have a width of 100%. I also want to give it a height, right? So I want to give it a height. I want the height to be 100%, but a height of 100% will not basically show. So if I say something like 100% now, and I say let the background be red, so I can just test it. So you could see that you cannot see what I've done, and that is because of I'm giving it percentage for the height, so it will not work. So for it to work the way we want it to work, we have to use the VH, which stands for the viewport height. So viewport height is like percentage too as well. So if I say VH and I will do this, you will see it will work. So 100 viewport. So viewport is what is visible to the user. That's what they call viewport. So it simply means that it should take 100% of it. So if we put 50 here, this is like 50%. So it will take 50% of the viewport height, no matter how small the window is. So let's try and reduce this. So if this is small like this, so oops, see, I've mistakenly closed it. Okay, let me run this again. I mistakenly closed it. All right. So this is it now. So this would be my viewport height. So anytime I stretch it, you see how responsive it is, right? So it's like percentage basically. So yeah, so that is why we have that there. Oops. The good thing it's not in two places. Let me close this one. All right. So let's have this now. So I'm just going to stretch this, blah blah. All right, let's go back. So that's me just explaining the viewport height, what it does for you. So let's give it 100. So now there is this spacing, this white border line here. I don't want it. It's coming from actually the body tag. So let's just type our body tag here so we could remove that. So I will not have that line. So I'm going to say margin. So a margin with 0px should be able to remove that for me. So you could see that that white border has disappeared. So I don't really want this to be a background of red. I just did it actually just so that I'll be able to see it. So the next thing I want to do now, if you notice, this particular form itself is at the middle. So I want to be able to do everything, so to be at the center of everything. So let's just go back to our HTML and just type something. So let's type a text here and just say test. So with this now, we should have our text here. So what I want to do now is to add some styling that will make text to be at the center here. So let's see how we could do that. So for us to do that, we're going to bring two things. We're going to make this holder a display of flex, right? So it's going to be flex so that we can use align item center. So we can now use align item center. So to center it horizontally at the center. Now we'll now say justify content center too as well. Justify content as well will also center it, bring it at the center as well. So now the thing now is, if we come over here and let's say we have one element 1, let's have element 1 and we have element 2 inside this. It's going to arrange it horizontally for us because of it is flex. So I want it to be arranged on a column base, not on a row base. So I'm going to change the flex direction. So I'm going to say flex direction column. So if I say column now, it's going to be the 2 is going to be under, which simply means now it is now like horizontal arrangement. So now that I have that done, I think we are good to go. So the next thing we want to do now, let's go and create the wrapper that will actually hold our form. So I will go ahead and let me just remove this one and let's add a class here. So let's call this particular class wrapper. So this is going to be like the wrapper of everything. So let's just create this one, come over here and create a CSS class for it. So with this now, the holder has enabled us to be able to put this here. So now this will automatically be at the center, right? So let's see how we could create that. So the width of the wrapper, I want to give it like 450. 450 px would do. Okay, you will not see it basically. So let's just give it a background. Let's give it a border so that you can actually see it. So we're going to give it a border of 1px solid, 1px solid hash. Let's give it DADCE0, DADCE0. Alright, so that is like gray. So I've basically checked this particular gray color before making this video. That's how I knew that particular color, right? I'm not a magician. Alright, so that being said, so we could see now that our wrapper is somewhere around here. So let's go ahead and give it a border radius. So we'll give it a border radius of 8px. So this works. So we can go ahead and give it a padding, right? So we're going to give it a padding. So we're going to give it a padding of 50. So 50 here is going to start for the top and bottom padding, while 36 is going to be our left and right padding. All right, so we've now created this basically, right? So which is nice. So I guess the next thing that we basically need to do is to start to design it. Now one thing that we've done now is, because of this stuff now is more than, actually it's more than 480px, right? So 450px. So let me show you. So let's say this is the holder class, right? So let's say I have a random div here. So because I just want to test it, I could just use inline CSS. I'm going to delete this. This is me just trying to explain why I'm going to do the next thing I'm going to do. So let's give it a width of 450. So same width, 450px. 450px. Let's give it height of so it can be visible. Let us say 100px. Let's give it background color. Let's say red, for example. Right? I think this works. Alright. I can't seem to find it. So width 400px, height 100px, background color. This should work, but do you know what? Let's cut all of this out. Oops, what did I do? Let me just Ctrl X this out and give it a class instead. And let us call it test class. So this is like our test class. Alright, let's come over here and see tests. Alright, so somehow I think this other one is blocking it. Let's see. Alright, why are we not seeing it? I'm pretty... Oh, we will not see it because... don't mind me. We will not see it because it's actually down here. I needed to scroll to actually see it. So because of this wrapper is already inside this, so what I just needed to do was to copy this and bring it inside here. So yeah, so that it could actually be inside that same holder. So you could see now, the thing now, you see this test is 450 and this other one is 450, but somehow this one seems a little bit wider than it, and that is because of this padding. So what this thing is doing now is adding this 36 padding to it. So 36 plus 36, that should give us like 72. So if I add 72 to this, it should actually give me the same height. So instead of this to be 450 by width, it is now about 500 and something, right? So it's about 527. So 522. So 522. Because of it has added this 36 on each side, 36 this side, 36 this side, so it just will give you 522. But this is not what we want, right? So because of that, we don't want it to include that particular padding, and that is why we're going to add this next CSS property I'm about to add. That property is called box sizing. So I'm going to say box sizing border box. So with box sizing, so it's not going to increase that, it's going to stick to that 450 width. So if we come back here and say 450, is going to be exactly 450 no matter the padding that we add to it. So we don't want it to change width because of we added the padding, right? So that is the reason why we are adding this particular border box. All right, let me delete this. That's just there. I just wanted to explain that border box. That is the reason for all of these text examples. So let me take this off. So now that we've done that, the next thing that we want to do in our clone is to basically bring in our logo, and that is the reason why we downloaded that particular logo. Right, so let's go ahead. So I'll go ahead, I'll just type image here, and it just give me this auto stuff. So I'll just go ahead and select my logo inside images, and I have my logo. All right, so I have my logo there. I could just type logo as the alternate text. It's like best practice. All right, let's see what we have. So we have our logo right here. So we don't need to do much. Just give it a width of, let's say, 75 px or so. That should actually do the trick for us. So now that we have that done, I guess the next thing that we want to do, if at all, is to come over here now. So we want everything to be at the center here. So I'll go back to my wrapper. So if I go back to my wrapper now, I'll make it a display flex so that I could actually make everything also centralized. In fact, let me just copy this for stuff here so that I can just repeat myself and paste it here. So what I just did now is with the display flex, align item center, justify content center, and also direction column will just actually allow everything I put inside here to be centralized. So now that I have that going, I could actually just go ahead and start typing in my stuff, right? Like start creating all of this content here. So let's create the sign in stuff, and this other one continue to Gmail. So I will go back here now to my HTML, and the first thing I want to do is I actually want to create a heading tag. So I'll just come over here, I'll just say div with a heading class. Then I have my h3 here, and let's call this one sign in, just the way they have it there. And let's have a paragraph text here, and let's call this one use your Google account. All right, that's what they type. I can use continue to Gmail. Is what they said? I use your Google account. Okay, whatever. So continue to Gmail. So let's type sign in to continue to Gmail. To continue to Gmail. All right, that looks cool. So sign in to continue to Gmail. So we have that there. So now that we have this here, everything looks pretty nice and awesome. And so let's see what we have if we have the same thing too. So this is how ours look like, right? So let's attempt to make ours look probably like what they have there. So the first thing we're going to do is I love to keep all my tags style at the top. So let's type our h3. So our h3 is going to be a font size of 24px, for example. That works. That's a little bit bigger. Font width, font width of 400 will work. Just make it a little bit not really bold, right? Then so I don't really want it to have the margin. There's this hidden margin that this stuff comes with, so just make it 0. So you could see now that those stuff is actually reducing. Then so the color could still be the main color. So I'll come over here. I want to give the color of the text in this particular document. I want to give it this color hash 5 f63 f6368. Okay, mind you, I've actually checked these colors before recording this. So let's give our history color. So we want this one to be full black. So let's give it 00. So this will give us full black. So we have this now. So another thing I want to do is I want to show you guys how you can also include fonts. You could notice that this font here and this font here is not the same, right? So I actually want the fonts to be some sort of the same. But before we actually make the fonts the same, remember we did created a heading class here that will never style. We'll call the heading class here that will never styled. So let's go ahead and attempt to start our heading class. So if we type it here, all we just need to put in the heading class is text align. That's all, text align center, and it will centralize it because everything here now is center, right? So have everything centralized. So permit me to just expand this a bit and go to just type for Google Fonts. I have it here already. So just search for Google Fonts. So you see the first stuff, you click on it. So this will allow us to see some fonts, and Google makes use of a particular font called Roboto. So this is it. So just click on it, and let me see if I have anything pre-selected. Uh, Let me deselect this. All right. So now you see nothing selected, right? So Roboto. So this is the Roboto font. So what I'm going to do is that for us to make use of this, just click on this plus sign. Click. I'll just add everything. So I'm adding all the family, right? So I'm adding everything. Okay, I've added everything. So if I come over here, view selected family, so you could see everything I've selected here. Then the link to add it, so I'll just copy this link. Copy. So now, if I go to my code base, instead of my HTML, all I just need to do is to paste what I just copied here. So this is like the link to do that. Mind you, this will need you to have like active internet connection, of course. So I'll save it here. Then the next one on is, if I scroll down, you're going to see how to call it font family Roboto. So I'll just copy this too as well. And I'll come over here. Then instead of my body, I'll just put it here, font family Roboto. Now this works fine for me. So you could see now that I have my font family Roboto. So you could see now this Roboto text looks very similar to what we have here. Alright, so since we have that there, another thing again that looks a little bit strange is the fact that there's a space between the logo and this stuff here, but right here it looks really close. So all we just need to do is to go back to our wrapper, I believe, and give it a gap of 20 px. So which is here, so just say gap 20 px. Alright, so it will just like increase that particular, add that particular space for us. So now that we have our heading tag, the next thing that I will actually love us to start to create is our form. So the form, right? So the form is this thing and this stuff here. So let's create the form. So I'll go back to my HTML. So for me to create a form, I'll just come over here. I'll just say form. So this is my form. Oops, I typed the wrong thing. So this is my form tag. The action, I'll just put action assign there, so it's not going anywhere. So now that I have my form, the next thing I actually want to do now is to create something that looks like a form wrapper, right? So let's go ahead and create our form wrapper. So I'll click here, I'll say div class form wrapper. All right, so that's my form wrapper. So I'll just copy it now, right? I'll copy this right now. I'll attempt to go and style it, right? So let me go and style it here. Oops, form wrapper. All right, that's it. So for my form wrapper, I want it to have a width of 100%, right? So width of 100%. I'll give it a little bit of margin top. Let me not give it margin top now. Let's see. So we're just going to give it a display of flex. So, but why are we even doing this, right? But let me just do it first, then later we'll work back and say we're doing flex direction. You've seen we'll be using this flex direction column, right? So the reason why I'm doing this, I'll explain now. Because column, all right, cool. Flex direction column. So the reason why I'm doing this is, if you see what we are styling here, so the form wrapper contains three things. It contains this input that has email or password, forgot email. It has not your computer, use guest mode to sign in privately, learn more. It also has create account and next. So these three things should actually be inside of our form wrapper, right? So because of these three things are inside of our form wrapper, and that is why I'm giving it a flex, right? So I'll still come back here to give you this particular spacing. But before we give you this particular spacing, let's actually include some of these three things inside of our HTML. So we'll go to our HTML now. So inside of our form wrapper, let's start typing. So the first div is just going to be an empty div, no styling. The first div that we're going to have is going to hold our input text and our anchor tag. So we're going to type inputs here. So the type is going to be text. No need for all of this stuff. So let us give it placeholder. The placeholder is going to be email or phone. Then we're going to have an anchor tag. So the link is not going anywhere, so let's just put hash there. And let us type forgot email, right? So forgot email question mark and save it. So let's go back and see what we have. So this is how it looks like now. Yeah. Um you might say it's a little it's a little bit ugly, yeah. But yeah, you get the point now. So let's go and start styling this thing, right? So the first thing I want to style there is my input. So let me style my input. So as usual, I like to put everything tags at the top. So I'll just put input selector here. So this will carry out every input selector. So I'm going to say width. So I want to give my input selector width of 100%. Automatically, once I do that, this is what I get. Pretty nice. So 100%, I want to give it a border. The border is the same border that we've had before. I think we've used this border. So this guy here, so 1px solid, basically the same color. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. So I have the same thing there. So the next thing I want to give it a padding. So I'm going to say padding 20px. Alright, it's going to have that amazing padding for me. Border radius is going to be the next one. So border radius, I'm going to give it 4px. Perfect. So I have that small curvature there. So the next I'm going to give it a font size. So the font size I'm going to give it, I want to have 16px. Alright, so I might not necessarily give it this font size here. Let me just cut it. So I could select the general font size with 16px. Works like magic. So the font size there is also going to be 16px. So, oops, that's cool. So there is this outline that appears. So we could choose to take it off if we want to, but let's just leave it. The next thing again that we could do is the box sizing. Remember, anytime we use padding, I want to use box sizing. So I'll say box sizing, border box. Alright. Yeah, just kind of arrange it. You might not really see the effect. So so we have the email or phone thing there, and everything is going on nice for us. So we want this to have a little bit space here. So we're just going to give it margin bottom. Margin bottom, say 8px. Alright, so there's going to be a little space between it here. So now let's go ahead and also style our anchor tag, right? So for our anchor tag, since it's a, let it be at the top here. So our anchor tag, so the color, I want to first give it a color of a blue. So this is the blue color. So I already know this color, that's the color Google would use. I use an eyedropper tool to basically pick that. So I'll say font weight, want it to be a little bit bold. So one thing, you could just type bold here, or you could actually use numbers. I prefer to use numbers. So 500 is like semi-bold, something like this. And I don't want the underline to be there, so I'm going to say text decoration. Oops, not text emphasis. Text decoration none. So this is going to take away the underline text there. So now it now looks a little bit like what Google has here. Forgot email, blah blah. So we have that. So the next thing now that we want to do is to type in this particular text. Not your computer use blah blah and all those stuff, right? So let's go ahead and do that. For us to do that, this other first div holds the input and this. So let's come over here. A paragraph text will work for us. So let's just type not. In order for me to not to waste my time, let me just copy and paste it. Alright, so I think that works. So not your computer, inside of learn more, there's an anchor tag here. So so href as usual. So this is where you put your link if actually you want to add a link. So the learn more should be inside. Alright, so this is it now. So let's go and see if everything looks just the way we want. Yeah, everything looks just the way we want it. Now the difference is that there is kind of space here, right? So how do we ensure that we have that same space? So if we go back, remember that in our wrapper, right, we should have our form wrapper, sorry, that's where everything is. So we could add a gap. So that this gap will create that space for us. So 40px, for example. Oops. So now you see now we have that space. So it looks like 40px. I'm just using my eye. This space looks more or less like 40px to me. So I'm using my eye just to determine it and to say, okay, yeah, this looks like 40px. But you can go ahead and tweak it, the value, if you think it's not up to 40px. All right, so let's proceed. So the next thing, which would be probably the final thing, not the final thing, but one of the final things, is to have our button group here. So Google has this amazing button group. So you could see that here, it has some little over effect. This is nice. So we have these outline buttons and this other button. So let's go ahead and create that. So the first thing we want to do is to create the button group. So let's go ahead and create it. So we'll come over here, and right here let's create a div. So let's call it btn group. So this is going to serve as our button group, right? All right, so this is like our button group. So in our button group we should be expecting two things. So let me just type 1 and 2. So the reason why I'm doing this is that they should be at the edge, one here to the other place. So they should be side by side. So let's go and see if we could actually style our button group and ensure that it is actually side by side. So I'll come over here, I'll type it here, I'll say button group side by side. So let's try it. So all we just need to do is to give it a display of flex. Flex just always does the magic for us. Oops, it's already column, right? Then justify. Justify content space between. Where is space between now? Let me start to type it. Space between would actually just make it go side by side, right? So that's what space between does. So this is great. So we have that. So let's go and add our actual buttons, right? So for our actual buttons, I don't need this actually. So this first one should be an A tag, right? And let us give it, because that looks more or less like a text button to me. So I'm just going to type in create account. So I think alright, something like this, right? Create account. So we have that there. So we could actually give this second one now here. We'll now type our button here. I will say type submit, because this is what will submit the form. So it's done intentionally. Then the value that we want it to have is next, because I think that's what Google use, next. All right, that's cool. So once we have that there, so let's give it a class. Let's call the class btn. So this our class here too as well is going to be btn2. So once we have the btn class here, so we can just go ahead and start styling this thing, right? So with the btn now, let's come over here and say btn. Let's style our btn. Now for us to start our btn, one of the first thing we'll do is to give it this background, right? So let me copy this color. I'll scroll down here. I'm going to say background hash paste. Oops. All right. So we have that there, which looks great. Then the color, which is the text color, should actually be white. Triple F white. That looks cool. Then border, we don't want it to have any border, of course. So just say, you can say none, which works. Just takes away the border for you. The next thing again is the padding. So I'm going to give it a simple padding, top and bottom 12px, while left and right should be like 24px. Just times 2 of that. That works. So border radius, so let us say border radius too as well. Let's give the border radius like 4px. It looks like what Google has. So yeah, that works. I think it has a font width. The Google font width seems to be a little bit thicker, right? So let's try that font width and give it like 500. Right, that works too. That works. Right, font weight works. Font weight 500. Then that's all. So I noticed again that each time I bring my cursor here, it's not changing to that hands gesture for the button. This one is changing, but this one is not changing. So just to ensure that everything is nice going on, let's just put cursor pointer. So cursor pointer would actually change it to that pointer stuff. Alright, so now that we have that here, so remember this other one, we don't want it to be this color. So we're going to create something else. We're going to call it btn outline. So we're going to add a two class here. So let's just call the second one btn outline. All right. So two class. First class is btn. The second one is btn outline. So let's go and style btn outline. So I'll come over here now, I'll say BTN and I'll put outline there. So once I have my BTN outline going on there, so let me style it and see how that goes, right? So I'm going to say background for my BTN outline should be none. So this should basically just take that background out. Then the color should be, of course, this color. So we'll just say color, yeah, that should give me that particular color back. So everything looks great and awesome, right? So if we want to go ahead and add the hover effect just the way they have it here, you could actually go ahead and add the hover effect. You could see that this one has a little bit of slightly hover effect that looks makes it look a little bit darker. So let's say we want to add hover effects. We'll just need to bring our BTN here and type hover like this and say background this, but okay, I'll just use this stuff and select dark color. Right, you might be wondering, tell me, how did you do that? I just basically hover my mouse here. So VS Code has this color picker thing. Once you have any color and you hover your mouse there, it's going to bring this color picker. So I just wanted something a little bit darker. So let's go and test it now. So oops, alright, that's darker. So I'm not really getting it exactly, but yeah, just using my eyes. Then this other one now, oops, so we need to have another one for the outline. Let me just copy everything here actually and just say hover. Alright, so the background is still none. So on hover is none, but if we look at it here, on hover here, there is this light background, right? There's this light background, so let's go and try that out. Let's copy this, bring it here, and so the background should not be this actually, should be something around this. Alright, I believe that works. So let's go and test it. Oops, ours looks really thick. Alright, let's go and try it again. Alright, so let's see. And why is it looking this thick? Alright, so we'll just keep trying it till we get it right. This looks really thick though. So for me not to do that, I guess I will use RGB. Let me use RGB and type A here and just use 0.2. So make it transparent. See, still gives me the same thing. See, nowhere to run. Okay, this looks more like it. Oops, but the access is really faint. The access is really faint. Let's type 0.05 and see. Alright, I think we've gotten it. Aha. I think we've gotten it. Alright, that works. So now, so we've done this, so it looks pretty much like the same thing right now. So we could choose to stop here. I think we've done something really nice. Let me even expand this. So we've done something really nice. So it looks similar. Yeah, so you could see you could hardly tell the difference, right? So now that we have this, so the next thing that we want to do, if at all, we just want to go further and clone this, is to add some of these things here too as well. So now if we want to create something like this, we know that this is a select stuff and this is another menu. So let's just do that, then we could just end this particular cloning video at that particular point. So I will come over here, right? So if I want to do that, I could just call it menu. Right, so let me just call it menu, and it's going to leave outside everything. So it's going to leave outside my wrapper. So it's going to be part of my holder, but it's not going to be part of my wrapper because my wrapper is one that's responsible for this outline, right? So it's going to be somewhere here. So let's put it somewhere here, give it a class. Let's just call it menu, right? We could actually give it any name. So let's call it menu. So instead of our menu, we should have two things. So we should have the select. So the select is the one that's responsible for the drop down. We don't necessarily need all of this, right? I won't really style it per se, but I don't need all of this. So let's give it options. So our option here is, so the first things that was selected in mind, let me just say English, United States, right? United States. All right. Duplicate it. Let's another language that they could choose is Igbo. Another one is Yoruba. Yoruba. Another one could be Hausa. Alright. So let's assume that those are the three languages they could choose. Right? So apart from select, so another thing that we love to have is another div. So let's have another div here. Let's give it a class. Let's call it terms. So we'll go ahead and style this particular class later. So let's add our anchor tag here. So the first one here is help according to what Google has. The second one here is privacy. The third one is terms, of course. All right. So we have that there. So everything looks good. So let's go and start styling this thing. So we'll come over here and let's create the menu class that we just called. So in our usual fashion, let's just give it a width as usual 450px. Of course, we're giving it with 450px because everything here is 450px, which looks good. Then we'll give it a display, of course, flex. So flex will allow everything to be on the same column. Then one more thing, you guessed right, justify content. We'll make it space between, we'll make it go between at two edges. So space between will do that for us. So let's add some padding to it. So if we want to add padding to it, top and bottom should be like 20px, while left and right should be like 0px. Alright, cool. So we have that going. Right, so we could choose to say, okay, menu has some select kind of thing, right? So let's come over here and say dot menu select, and let us say border none. So what this selector does, or connector as it's called, it just goes inside menu and picks select. So it picks that select and remove that stuff. That's what it does, right? So we could also use the same strategy to style terms, but let's just say terms here. So inside this we have terms. So for our terms, we'll just put display flex as usual. So we use a lot of flex here. So display flex here, so we can add some gap between it. That is the reason why I'm giving it display flex. So I will say gap, and the gap that I want to add a gap of 24px. All right, 24px will do the job for me. 24px. So we'll have this. So, but the thing is the anchor tags here, they are all gray, right? So let's do that. So all I need to do, I'll say terms, I'll say connector anchor tag, and I will style that now. I will select the color be, we've used that color, like I think this is the gray color, so it's just going to give us that particular gray. So font weights, so let's reduce the font weight to like 400 so it to be lighter. Then the font size too, it seems to be smaller, like 12px I believe. So it looks like what Google has is really small. Yeah, 12px. So I think everything is nice, and everything is really nice now. So we're done with our cloning for now, and it looks pretty much like similar. So we don't need to like create our own custom selects. I just had to just leave it like this basically, right? Just had to leave it like this. All right, so we have that there, and everything looks nice to me. So the next thing now that I want us to do is to add our favicon icon, so we could have this Gmail blah blah here. So let's go and have our favicon icon there. So for us to add our favicon icon, so we just need to use our link tag as usual. Link. I'm going to type icon here under the rel. Then images icon. All right. So that works. So we have our icon there. So if we want it to be exactly the same thing here, instead of sign in Google account, we could just change this to Gmail. All right. So it looks exactly like what I have here and here too as well. So it's cool. So this is us basically cloning it. So let's see how responsive it is. So if I right click and I click on inspect and I click this icon here to give me some kind of responsive view on a smartphone XR. So this is how it looks like. It's not really cool. So for me to make this responsive, I just need to do something. So all I just need to do is to go to my CSS and use my media query at media query. So maximum width, max width, we say anything below what now? Let's say 580, because that stuff is 450, right? So 580. Let the width of our wrapper, comma, and the width of our menu. So those are the two things that have 450. Let their width be 85%. So we'll change it to percentage now, 85%. So I guess this will do the trick for us automatically. You see, everything is now super responsive, right? So this is what we're talking about. So with this, we have a very responsive clone of the Google sign-in page, right? So which is really cool. So you could go ahead and try it on your own and let us know if you have any challenges in doing so. And if there is anything you don't understand, please don't feel to ask your questions, right? So I wish you happy coding. See you in the next video.